Hello, and welcome to Boomer Banter. And we have talked about the grieving journey before. It's not a journey any of us want to be on, but it is a journey that we will all experience at some point in our lives, no matter how young or how old we are. And children can end up grieving for a lost pet or even a toy or a grandparent. And as adults, we lose our parents or a sibling or a partner. And we sometimes lose our physical abilities, and we can find that we grieve for that. Grief comes in many forms, and we all travel through it in our own ways. What we do know is that grief can tend to isolate us. We find that our friends or family are uncomfortable with hearing us talk about our sense of loss. And so they want us to just get over it. They don't want to hear about it anymore. So we tend to shut down and not share those feelings. And that can result in a sense of isolation. I know for me, when my dad passed, he was in hospice, and hospice offered counseling and group coaching and things like that. And that worked well for me because it allowed me a place where I could talk about my feelings, to be with other people that were also feeling similar things, and offer that love and support that some of my friends and family members maybe weren't comfortable with sharing. So today we're going to speak with Kerri Lewis. She is a grief coach who has had her share of grief and who has reinvented herself after the sudden loss of her beloved husband. There is life after loss. It is a journey and not a destination. Welcome to Boomer Banter, the podcast where we have real talk about aging well. My name is Wendy Green, and I am your host. And let me tell you a bit about Kerri. She is a widow, a mother, a grandmother, and an optimist. Kerri founded Second Act Mastery following the sudden death of her husband and best friend, out of a desire to connect with and bring together others who are grieving. Kerri studied to be a grief coach after his death. She also likes to poke around local shops for old furniture and collectibles, work on restoring her historic home, and putter in her garden. Kerri is a California native transplanted to southern Utah with her canine companion and sidekick, Lulu, who we hope will behave during this episode. So if you like what we are talking about and you want to learn more about some of the topics that we talk about on Boomer Banter, I encourage you to sign up for the Real Talk About Aging Well newsletter. We publish once a week on Thursdays, and each edition contains nuggets on financial literacy, relationships, purpose, or health. And you can learn from and implement some of the ideas immediately. So to sign up, go to bit.ly/navigateaging and invite your friends to join us as well. So I'd like to introduce you all to Kerri. Hello, Kerri Lewis.
Hello, Wendy. It's good to be with you today.
Well, thank you for being with us today. I'd like to start with you giving a brief overview of your husband and that relationship.
Oh, I'll be happy to do that. First of all, this would have been his birthday today, his 75th birthday.
Oh,
and so I find that this particular day is very appropriate to be speaking with you and your audience about loss and grieving. Bobby was he was a wonderful human being. He was a very loving man. I used to tell him that I fell in love with his big red heart more than anything else because he was kind, he was compassionate, he was funny. He made me laugh all the time. I can remember in the early stages of our relationship or a later in life relationship that my face used to hurt sometimes during the day from laughing so much. He was very demonstrative. So he was we would be maybe standing there talking to a neighbor or something, and he would just grab hold of me and spin me around and say, I just love you, and put me down
Aw.
to the conversation and things like that. We had a business together. He was a professional golf instructor, and that had not been his career, but in later life, it's what he really wanted to do. So we worked hard to make certain that that happened. And we had so much fun doing that. We really did. And I was just, his students and the people that, at the golf courses and so forth, just adored him. When he passed, I had a memorial service for him, of course, and I was expecting something like 80 people. It ended up being nearly 300 people. And there were people that came out of our past because Bobby and I grew up together. We actually started our lives together at the age of 5 years old in kindergarten. Wow. And we went all through school together until high school or through high school. We were neighbors. We shared a lot of the same friends and things like that. And then we eventually went off and did our own lives in a separate way. And then later in life, we came back together again. We reconnected again. And we had a 10-year marriage that was absolutely, it was like a dream come true, at least for me. And I think he felt the same way. And he was just a great man. And so losing him, of course, was that was an enormous loss for me.
That was devastating for you. Yeah. And before we came on today, you were telling me about having your mother live with you and how
Yes.
difficult that was. And,
yes,
I'm wondering if the loss of Bobby and your mother were not giving you support, how that impacted your decision to look into grief coaching.
Well, initially, it just added to the burden of my loss. But I am not someone who really enjoys being in that space. And I didn't really know what to do. About a year had gone by. My mother and I had reached a point where we were barely speaking to one another. She was very angry and very bitter, and as was I. And I think losing Bobby only exacerbated that problem. So finally, I got to a point where I honestly, I just became so tired of being so sad and carrying this huge weight on my shoulders. And my heart was hurting all the time. And I didn't feel like doing anything. All of the things that we had done in the past, or I had done in the past, I just had no interest whatsoever. Obviously, the business that Bobby and I built together had gone by the wayside because he was the instructor. And without the instructor, there's no golf lessons.
Yeah.
So I decided to seek out some counseling. And in my heart, I felt like this is probably not going to work, but I'm going to start there. And so I found two ladies. They were recommended to me, and we talked, and they said, they would take me on. And the first initial visit was really intense. All the tears and the sorrow and sadness that I had been holding for so long just came flooding out. And that was actually very cathartic because I realized that I had been holding all of that. And once I was able to release it to someone I trusted, who wasn't trying to tell me what to do or how to handle things, just listened. Mm-hmm. It made a big difference. So I started the counseling sessions with them. And some weeks into it, I had this little spark inside of me. And I thought, I think I could help others myself doing this. I don't know how to go about that, but I'd like to find out. I'd like to learn because I really would like to help others. I think that because of my own experiences, I would be good at that. And I think I would really enjoy doing that. And so that's what I did. I pursued that. And when I started, I wasn't entirely sure that, dealing with people who had lost loved ones or been through divorces or retirement, jobs, whatever it is, whatever they've lost. I wasn't certain that that was exactly what I was going to do. But I found pretty quickly that I really enjoyed it, as painful as it can sometimes be when you're speaking with a client who's lost, say, an adult child, or they've lost their husband or their wife or whatever. It's difficult. At the same time, at the end of those sessions, when the client looks at me and gives me a hug and says, "You have made such a difference in the way I feel," it's almost like taking a drug. There's a certain high that comes with that feels wonderful, that, that I've helped someone.
Yeah. And as I said in the beginning, one of the things that's so difficult for people who are grieving is that nobody really wants to hear about it. Right. And
No, they
so,
don't. Well, and in fairness, it's because our culture, our society does not teach people how to react to the loss of some kind of a loss, whatever it might be. And they just don't know. They mean well. I knew that. I mean, I had lots of friends who were very kind to me and had what they felt were kind words. And they were irritating to me. But I also recognized that they just didn't know what to say. They don't know how to talk. They don't know how to say, "Tell me about your husband. Tell me about how you're feeling." They don't know how to do that. So I have tried to incorporate that in my practice because I think it's critically important. There's people want to help someone that they care about when they're grieving, but they just don't know how. They don't know what to
yeah.
say.
And I think part of it is, it's the people you talk to, your friends, your relatives, they love you and they don't like seeing you in pain.
No, they
Right. So
don't.
they're trying to fix that. Whereas
That's
what
right.
you really need is just listen. Don't fix
That's
me,
the
just
most,
listen.
I agree, Wendy. That's the most important thing, is just being there for someone to hear and to sincerely listen, not dole out advice. Try to put the shoulds completely behind you, because people don't want to hear that. It's not helpful at all. All they want to do is just vent or talk about the person they care about. And that goes on. My husband's been gone nearly 8 years, and I'm still doing that. I talk about him all the time. I don't want people to forget about him. I don't want to forget about him. And so he is in the conversation on a regular basis. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, would have been his birthday today. And I will be celebrating that. I'll have a nice glass of wine this evening, and I'll make a nice dinner, and I'll talk with him. I'll wish him a happy birthday and let him
Well,
know that
hopefully everybody who's listening today will wish him a happy birthday as
I
well.
hope so. He was
Yeah.
somebody that was definitely worth not forgetting. And I don't think that anybody that actually knew him would forget him anyway, because he was that kind of a person. He just had a big personality and a big life.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the emotions that people who are dealing with grief experience and how you handle it. So I know one thing that I've heard people talk about is the guilt, especially when it's either a lingering illness and they can't help them get better, or it's sudden and you're like, "Oh man, I should have been there. I should have known," whatever. How do you help people get through some of that guilt?
Again, by allowing them to talk about it and share what they're feeling guilty about, and helping them understand that the loss of their loved one is not their fault. That's very important to know that, and just let them talk it out and help them understand that there is probably not a reason to feel guilty. If you feel, I know one of my first clients was a woman who, she did lose her adult child, and she was carrying on this massive guilt because her daughter had invited her to come visit her a few months earlier, and her daughter was living in England, and she is here in Cedar, and she was working, and she couldn't go, but she was feeling this tremendous guilt. So we talked a lot about that as to why she was feeling that way, and I tried to help her understand that the guilt was misplaced. There was no need for it. There was no way that anyone could have known what was going to happen. And, it's just something that the individual has to work through. and realize that it's okay. The person that passed is not mad at you. They're not upset with you or anything like that. It's just a part of losing someone.
Yeah, it's a hard one to let go of when you're feeling that.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult. And, I think that's oddly enough, even though I had Bobby nor I had any idea that he was going to pass the way he did, but it was something that we were aware of, and we never let a day go by without telling one another we loved each other. And when we went to bed at night, we tried to, if there was any rough spots between us or arguments, whatever it might be, we tried to resolve those before going to sleep at night, just always knowing that it could happen. But even if you don't do that, you don't live that way, again, just working through that guilt and trying to understand that it is part of the grieving process, but you can work through it, and it's probably not necessary.
So what are some of the other emotions that you hear your clients talk about?
Anxiety and fear are two of the big ones, particularly fear when there is, in my case, like I said, we had a business together, and when he died, that was the end of that business. And so financially, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I was fearful. I was fearful about a lot of things. How was I going to go on with my life? In the early stages of my grief, I didn't want to live. I wasn't really suicidal, I don't feel, but I just didn't want to live anymore. It's like, well, I want to be with him. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of fear. In my case, again, because my mother was living with me, I wasn't sure how I was going to handle all of that. And there's the anxiety that goes with that. It's a really tough thing. And until you start working through it, you really don't know what you're going to do. I don't think most people have a big master plan, and under these circumstances. So
Yeah. So do you typically meet with people one-on-one? Do you do groups? What works best, do you think?
I started off purely doing one-on-one sessions, and then I found that I really would, want to help a number of people, a lot of people, and doing one-on-ones is difficult. I still do them, but I have switched to doing small groups, and I find them to be considerably more effective and more fun, and it's not quite so intimidating as sitting down and talking one-on-one with someone that maybe you don't know, or you don't know what you're going to say or so forth. So I like the groups. Like I said, I keep them small, like usually between 4 to 6 people, because makes it a lot more manageable. Everybody gets a chance to say whatever they want to say and talk about what they want to talk about. And so that's what I do. And then I'm also planning to do an online private community, which will be a membership-based community, and it'll have a forum, and I'll do a monthly session with everybody that wants to join. And I feel like it's so important that people connect with others who are going through the same things they're going through, because the feeling of being completely alone is another big problem with people who are grieving, and they're really not, but they don't know that. And maybe if they have a family who is not necessarily sympathetic or supportive of what they're going through, then they are alone, and they need to connect with others if they can and will. And so I'm developing that right now. I'll offer some courses, some different kinds of worksheets, tools, techniques, all of those things, to the group, and it'll be a small monthly fee, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and I like the idea of a group, and I've also done group coaching, and I find that sometimes the group, the way they gel, they tend to help and support each other. So, you may be coming into it thinking you're the only one that's feeling this way. And when you find that you're not, it kind of takes some of that tension, that anxiety off that you talked about.
It does. And it helps them realize that they are not alone, that there are others who are probably going through much the same thing they are. And they might be at a different stage. Early on in grief, it's more about mourning than anything else. But even as I said earlier, like in my case, where my husband's been gone nearly 8 years, and I still carry grief. It will be with me forever. And that's the case with everyone who loses someone they care about. And
But it doesn't control your life like it did in the beginning.
It does not. It comes and goes. I have most days where I feel okay. I feel good. And then I have days that I don't feel so good, or I have periods. We just came through the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. For whatever reason, this particular year was a really tough year for me. I didn't feel like celebrating Christmas. I didn't feel, I was really missing Bobby for some reason. I have no explanation for that, except to say that all you can do is allow it to flow through you. It will pass, and you can move on with whatever you're doing, whatever in your life that's going on. It's just important to allow that to happen. Most of the time, though, I feel pretty good. And one of the things that has helped me a lot, and I encourage others to think of it this way, is try to imagine having a conversation with the person that's passed and ask them, what would you like me to be doing? And you know the answer to that before you ever even ask that question. But it helps to imagine that person saying to you, well, I want you to be happy, or I want you to do this or that or the other thing. I've done that with Bobby, and I know that I want to please him. I mean, I still want to please him. So I am going to do whatever I have to do to make my life the best it possibly can be. And I feel like if he is in fact watching, which I think he is, I feel like he's proud of me. He's saying, yeah, that's what I want you to do. Yeah. And I encourage others to do the same, because it's very helpful.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like he's proud of you. Yeah. And when we talked, that was probably a couple of months ago when we first talked, and you said something about the mindset of gratitude, and which almost seems like how can you be grateful while you're going through this grieving process? So tell me about that.
It's a strange thing, but if you can muster up the gratitude for whatever it is, it is enormously helpful. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. I just know that it is. I can remember very shortly after Bobby died, I had a tremendous amount of gratitude for the fact that, one, I was with him until he took his last breath, that I had a life with him. I had actually had a full lifetime with him. We reconnected later and married, and I was very grateful for that. Even though it was only 10 years before he died, it was a wonderful 10 years. And I'm so grateful to have that. I can carry those memories in my heart and in my mind until the end of my time. And it helps to make me feel like he's closer. And so I encourage others to do that. This is where journaling is a really effective tool. I use this a lot, or encourage people to use it a lot in my practice. And that is that write down the things that you're grateful for. And what begins to happen, you start off with one or two things, and then but it puts you in that right mindset, and you start thinking about that. And it could be really small things like, oh, I just love the way my bed feels at night when I crawl in my bed. Or
exactly.
You get in the shower in the morning and you feel that nice, clean, hot water hit your body. It feels great.
Yes.
Even simple things like that can change the way you think overall about everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really important.
Oh, I agree. I think gratitude is so powerful. So
it is
I'm
powerful.
Glad.
It really is. Gratitude and appreciation. I mean, we really do have a lot to be appreciative of and grateful for. And it's important that we remember that every single day. And pretty soon it becomes more of a habit. you just kind of automatically think that way. It can literally pull you out of a dark place. Sometimes in the mornings, I'll wake up and I just feel this heavy darkness, and I walk in here in the kitchen and I think, oh, look at that beautiful view I have out my kitchen window. And then I start thinking that way, and I just start feeling better right away.
Yeah. Grateful for my morning cup of coffee, those kinds of things.
Yes.
Right? I know.
Yes.
It's the simple things.
It is simple things,
especially
but they're very meaningful.
And especially with all the craziness going on in the world today, you got to find
Well,
those little things to be grateful for.
There's actually a lot more than you realize when you start thinking that way. And that's along those lines. I really encourage anyone to stay away from the news if you can. It's very addictive. It's very easy to get caught up in it. It's everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, it's everywhere. But I encourage people to stay away from it because
it'll bring you grief too.
It brings you a lot of grief, and it gets you angry. It puts you in a place in a negative space, and that's where you want to stay away from all of that. So there's nothing you can do about what's going on other than just get involved in the conversation, but it's not going to be helpful. So stay away. Stay away from movies. Being very careful of what you consume, even in movies and things like that.
Yeah. And so that's an interesting segue to what I want to talk about next, because it's true. Grief is not just about the loss of a person. No. It could be the loss of control. When we talk about the news, it could also be about the loss of some of our physical ability as we get older, the loss of mobility or our hearing or our eyesight. And it can create a lot of grief. And so I'm wondering what you would encourage people, how they can shift their mindset about some of our physical losses.
That obviously is a little tougher, but it starts with, again, simple things like getting your body moving every day. Even if you are maybe in pain or you're having a difficulty moving, just getting out in your yard if you have one, or if you're living in an apartment or something like that, get outside. I know there's always green spaces around places like that. Just get outside and enjoy some fresh air. And move around your house. You can walk around your home. If you have stairs, go up and down your stairs a time or two during the day so that you're moving your body. That's very important.
And I think gratitude there too, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, no matter how bad things might be, they could always be worse. And if you can think of not necessarily, oh, well, I'm doing better than the next person, but just think about the things that you can do, and
which you still can do.
You still can do. And, it helps to build your stamina. It's very good for your brain, keeps your mind active and so forth. And if you get tired after a little bit of that, that's okay. At least you're able to do it. And so I think that's very important. Another thing I think is really important is just doing simple things. Like if you meditate, do even a brief 10-minute meditation during the day is very helpful. Or if it's not meditation, how about prayer? Those things they're very positive things, and they make you feel better. They help you feel better. They help you live in the moment instead of projecting into the future and worrying about what's going to happen next, or living in the past and dwelling on whatever has happened to you, whatever it might be. And so these are things I think they're valuable and they're important, and they help you feel better.
I think it's finding those things, so like we talk about our cup of coffee in the morning. Well, what if you make it a ritual? You set out a nice cup and maybe a little cookie, and you just make it special because you're worth it, right? And so I think that's a mindset thing too.
It is a mindset, Wendy, and it's very, very important. In fact, that's funny that you talk about a ritual, because I used to have my coffee and not think much about it. Bobby used to bring me my coffee every morning, and it was wonderful and all of that. But now I have turned it into just that. It's a ritual. I grind my own coffee beans, and I prepare a cup of I only prepare one, but I grind my own beans, make a cup of coffee, put a little cinnamon in there and maybe some whipped cream or something like that. And I sit down and that might be the time that I look at my email or something like that. But I try to stay within the realm of positive things, not something that's going to upset me or anything like that. So it
Yeah.
might be just sitting down to watch a YouTube. I love to watch YouTube videos. There's many, many of them out there. Podcasts like yours and others, they're very beneficial and they're entertaining, and they bring a lot of good information that we need, and it puts us in a positive mindset. So yes, all of those things. And the same thing with meals at night.
Exactly. Treat yourself.
Treat yourself to a nice meal. Cook yourself a nice dinner. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It might simply be a piece of steak and a salad, or it might just, whatever it is, turn it into something that's delightful. Light some candles. Put the candles on your table and light them. Dim the lights in the room. Just enjoy the meal. Savor it instead of thinking, it's lonely. I don't like eating by myself. Again, it's a negative
space. Or my back hurts, or my hearing's not. So whatever, if you say, well, I'm still worth being treated special, I'm going to make this a special time for me. That's kind of nice. Yeah. Wrap yourself in your favorite blanket when you read, whatever it is.
Right. Well, and the other side of that is when your friends or your loved ones see you behaving that way, it encourages them to be around you more. They want to, they admire what you're doing, and that feels good. That feels really good to have that as well. So
yeah,
I think it's important to do for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I like that. So you and I are both coaches, and as a coach, we always are trying to find the growth opportunities from the challenges that life gives us, but no one wants to journey through grief. That's not the challenge you asked for, but I wonder what you've learned about yourself in your journey of healing from this very sad loss.
I've learned that I actually feel like I have become a better version of the person I was. I liked the person I was before, but I was slammed with this terrible event, and I had to figure out how to live my life after losing my husband. And so as you mentioned, I enrolled in a course, a certification course, and took that on. I have just, I've learned how to meditate and journal and all of the things that I'm talking about today. I do all of those things. Those are all practices that I've taken on in my life. I've learned that when you go through something like grief from the loss of someone, or it could, like I said, it could be a divorce, it could be a job, a retirement, loss of a pet, anything like that, it helps you grow. It helps you look at your life and in a different way than you did before. It makes you appreciate the things that you have. It makes you feel more grateful for the things you have. And that all of those things help you grow. They help you become a different person, but you're the same, but you're better. It's just a better version of you. Mm-hmm. And as far as my practice goes, I find that talking with people, I absolutely love doing that, because once again, I know that it's helping them. I was where they might be now, where, they're suffering. It might be the early stages of their loss, and they're suffering terribly. And I can help them, and that makes me feel better. And they do get help when they speak with me. The hardest part of bringing people in is convincing them that that's what they need to do. Speaking with someone and seeking the support they need is vitally important.
Well, I was curious about that. Like, you, in your practice, as you've explained, you acknowledge the feelings that they have. You don't make them wrong for having those feelings. And then you're trying to show them a path, I guess, to finding purpose or joy or some other way of looking at life. How do
Absolutely.
you find the balance in that?
It's not easy. It really isn't. It depends a lot on the person, of course, but I try, before I ever take on the client, I talk with them and we have a conversation, and I try to determine whether they're of the mindset to even work with me.
Mm.
If they're completely resistant to the idea of talking with anybody, if they are of the mindset, and this is particularly true of women and other people in our age group, where they just want to buck up, they want to, be tough and just grind through it. It's one of the worst things they could actually do. They're not going to get better. They're not going to feel any better a year from now, or 2 years from now, whatever it might be, because they have all these emotions that are stored up inside of them, and it can lead to not only isolation, but it can lead to a deep depression and physical ailments. And as a matter of fact, along those lines, I just had a client yesterday, and she was talking about, she lost her husband about the same time I did. And she was telling me that when the first few years, she didn't want to live anymore. And so she just isolated herself. And now what has happened is she's become sick. She's got some serious ailments that she's having to deal with. And she believes, and as I do, that she brought those on herself because she just would not reach out for support.
Mm-hmm.
Now that she's doing that, she is feeling better, and she will get better, I believe, and her life will improve. And while she'll always carry that grief with her, it takes on different forms, and it has different intensities as time goes on.
Yeah, well, there certainly is scientific evidence that shows how stress can be so damaging to our physical well-being.
Yes, it
So
really
before
can
I
be.
let you go, do you have 2 or 3 suggestions for people that are in a stage of grief for whatever reason, right? About how to try and lessen some of the pain? Is that even the way to say it? I don't even know if that's the right way to say it.
Well, I don't know that lessening the pain is really the goal, but what you do want to do is move forward and try to heal. And depending on where you are in the grief process, if you're, for example, in the early stages of grief, I've written a very simple but effective guide for people, giving them steps on what they can do, which includes simple things like, get out of bed in the morning, take a shower, go outside and walk around, and things like that. So that's available. It's a free guide that I have put out to anyone that is interested in it. They can get it on my website.
Which is?
Second Act Mastery, and then there's a link for the free, it says free guide right up at the top of the
Okay.
page. So it's easy to find. And so I would encourage people to download that. It's a download, and read it, and follow some of the steps, because it will help you. I know for me, it was this is where it came from, actually, is the things that I did in the early stages after I lost Bobby. Just getting up in the morning and things like that. So I encourage people to do that. Again, we talked about the practice of, journaling and writing down the things that you're grateful for. If you don't want to do that, then just put it in your mind. Say it out loud while you're having your coffee in the morning. I'm grateful for this wonderful cup of coffee. I'm wonderful that I have a roof over my head, that I have, a life that at least I'm living. I woke up this morning and I'm breathing. I'm walking around, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Meditation is another one, or prayer, if that's what your preference is. But just having some very simple method that helps you to be in the moment, be in the now, if you will. It helps because, again, nothing bad is happening in the now. It's try not to worry about what's going to happen in the future when you're doing that. Those can come later. And listening to nice music is another thing. It's a wonderful thing
Oh,
to.
it's a wonderful, yeah.
It really can be, and it doesn't make any difference what kind of music. It's whatever you prefer. I'm of the age where rock and roll is what I grew up on, and I still like that, and I still
Right.
listen to that, and it makes me feel good. Sometimes it might be more meditative. It might be some blues or jazz, whatever it is, whatever makes you feel good, and you'll know that immediately, and it can help heal, and at least in the moment. And
Absolutely.
don't isolate yourself. That's one of the absolute worst things you can do, even though that's what you feel like doing. You don't want to talk to anybody, but it's important that you allow people in. Let them help you if they're willing to do so.
Hmm.
And if you don't have anybody like that, then seek out professional help, like people like you and I who are coaches and we're trained to do this. And in my case, certainly, I've been through it. I know exactly how those people feel, and I want to help you.
Yeah. And we appreciate how open you were about sharing your story and what you're trying to do. You can find Kerri at secondactmastery.com. And as she said, that's where you can download the guide for helpful things that you can do to start moving forward again. So, Kerri,
One of
go ahead.
One other thing, if I could mention it, I do have a group starting up tomorrow, and it's not too late to sign up if you're interested. And again, that's posted right on the front page of my website. It's an online Zoom meeting, and all the information is there on the website. So if that's of interest to you, if tomorrow is a little too soon for you, I run these groups often, so I have new ones coming up all the time.
So it's a grief support group.
It's a grief support group. I call it
Okay.
Heal Your Heart, and that's exactly what it's for.
Yeah. Beautiful. Um, as part of the stuff that I do, I am in collaboration with fellow podcasters who have shows designed for people in our age group. And so this month, I want to introduce my listeners to a podcast called Fading Memories Podcast. In Fading Memories, Jennifer Fink, who is the host, she offers valuable insights for effective caregiving techniques and self-care strategies. She discusses brain health recommendations and some of the challenges of being a caregiver of a loved one with dementia. So check out Fading Memories podcast for practical advice and compassionate support through your caregiving journey, wherever you listen to podcasts. And next week, we are talking with a wonderful woman named Jessica Smith. And Jessica and I will explore the deeply personal and transformative journey of caregiving for a parent who is no longer the same person you grew up with. Join me as I talk with Jessica about how her relationship with her mother, who is living with advanced Alzheimer's and Lewy body dementia, has shaped her own outlook on self-awareness, resilience, and accepting help. It's sure to be a powerful conversation. Jessica is explains things very well, so you won't want to miss that. So thank you so much, Kerri. And
Thank you. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak with your audience, Wendy, and speak with you. And this has been a wonderful experience for me.
thank you. And thank you all for joining us and sharing your time with Boomer Banter. I will see you next week.
Okay.